Today's guest is the CEO and co-founder of Usul, an AI platform that helps companies win government contracts, now located in 60 countries. Its goal is to build a global marketplace for governments to buy products quickly, starting with defense. Please welcome Jarren Reid. Jarren,
Hello.
Thank you for coming to San Diego.
Thanks for having me. It's raining.
I know.
And kind of gross.
Why'd you do that to me?
I was surprised. Like San Francisco was very sunny.
Yeah.
And I got here and it was like raining pretty heavily last night, which is really gross. But
I know. We had our Excel down at the event and it was just getting poured on.
it became a rain shelter. Everyone just stood inside of it.
Exactly. Captive audience.
Yeah. You can maximize the demos you had in there, right?
Yeah. I think they call that rain maxing. All right. So, Jarren, we've known each other for a couple years, but for people who are listening, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. Hey guys, I'm Jarren. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of a startup called Usul. We launched our platform just over a year ago, like about 13 months. But our company started about a year and a half ago. We build AI software that helps companies sell to the US government and allied nations abroad, so now over 60 nations. And our goal is to build a global marketplace for any government to buy any product quickly in their computer. So think like things from defense, IT, cyber, healthcare, construction, energy infrastructure, anything. Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about first where the idea came from, right? And then how you've kind of pivoted as you've probably seen where the money's coming over the last year.
Yeah. So I grew up outside of Washington, D.C. in Northern Virginia. And because of that, as I'm sure you're familiar with, everyone who lives in D.C. either works for the government or works for a company that sells to the government, right? And I wasn't very cognizant of this growing up, but funny enough, like all of my friends' parents from high school all work for the government, work for a government contractor. And my parents were in and out of the industry as well. So I was like indirectly familiar with the problems that government contractors experience. And I actually watched my dad use like Deltek and Excel and terrible government software.
Do not say that company name in this office.
All day, every day, and he would complain about it in our living room. And so when I learned how to code at 15, at that age, I had some interest in solving these problems. Funny enough, I actually left high school for the first company I started. Did that for a bit. I went to Stanford where I met my now co-founders and worked at Palantir a little bit while I was there. And at Stanford, we took this class called Hacking for Defense. And so Hacking for Defense is a 10-week incubator at Stanford where they bring in computer science majors and people studying like policy and national security.
Is Steve Blank run that?
Yes, Steve Blank runs it.
Shout out, Steve.
Great guy, amazing mentor. So it's a 10-week incubator to pretty much work and hack and iterate on national security problems.
Yeah.
So the funny thing was our team was like the predominantly technical team in the class. So we were all computer science guys. And Steve actually took us under his wing. So we were the team directly under Steve Blank. And so Steve or someone tasked us with the problem of integrating AI in the DoD, which is the most broad problem statement you can be tasked to solve for a 10-week class project. Like that's astronomically difficult, right?
Yeah.
And so we spent 10 weeks interviewing over 200 people, both in the Pentagon and on the private sector, so like execs at like Lockheed Martin and the primes and et cetera. And just would ask them like open-ended questions about the problems they faced, right? There's actually a really good book on this called The Mom Test. It's about how to ask like really good, like comforting, open-ended questions to like get people to explain things to you.
The Mom Test.
Yeah, very good. The Mom Test. It's like you should be able to like ask very simple questions that your mom would understand about really complex topics, right? And so we did this over the course of 10 weeks. Everyone complained to us about the procurement process, despite us asking open-ended questions. It meant like, hey, this is actually a really big problem. And what we realized is that historically, government software was really fragmented. And as an outsider looking in on the industry, there were dozens of tools that companies would use for different use cases in their business, right? And so we figured that, hey, with AI, maybe we could consolidate these use cases. And then we looked across NATO, there were over 1 million suppliers actively supplying our allies, that maybe we could build a really big business. And that was like the original hypothesis we had. So
yeah. Okay. So let's talk about NATO for a second, right? What I've seen, which has been pretty interesting, is like the Europeans are really moving to this, we're going to buy European stuff and not buy American stuff anymore.
Yeah.
How have you seen that kind of play out over the last year, and where do you think it's going?
Yeah. So there's two big things I've observed. The first, directly to your question, like yes, that is true, and it varies on a per country basis, right? So like, for instance, like if France prefers French UAS suppliers, they want to source those capabilities. The problem is NATO itself has set up innovation arms that they tasked with doing like capability searching and like, sourcing startups, sourcing innovative products. The problem is there's multiple organizations in NATO, but because they're funded by NATO, they're government funded, their incentive is to have pretty much like diversity of investments across all 32 nations in NATO instead of actually finding the best product. So for instance, like if let's just use a hypothetical example here. Let's imagine all of the best UAS products are coming out of Poland, right? However, but let's say they have no UAS manufacturers in North Macedonia. Instead of choosing the actual best product, they're kind of incentivized to go find one in North Macedonia because they're funded by the government, they're not privately funded, they have to have diversity of investment. So what that does is it makes it very difficult for innovation arms in NATO to actually match the best product to a set of requirements or government needs, et cetera. Very similar to the US, it's just spread out across 32 nations, right? And in Europe mainly. So that's the first thing is like, yes, that is happening, but the pain is finding the best capability manufacturer in said area. Yeah.
Fascinating. So did they realize this is an issue?
Yes. We did the mom test with them, and they naturally described this pain. And I think as an outsider, I call myself an outsider because I didn't work like a long tenure in government contracting before coming into this industry because we dropped out of college. But as an outsider coming in, ignorance is kind of bliss. Sure. And so I kind of just went in with no assumptions. I asked them the problems they faced. And what I've realized is that it's probably not best to task government agencies with solving problems that commercial companies would be much best suited for, AKA like this problem we're talking about right now. And I think historically, specifically in government procurement in the U.S., the U.S. government has tried to tackle this problem a lot of times. And me being a pessimist on government software, anytime the government launches or an ally nation launches a website that commercial companies are supposed to interact with, it's never great. And that's because they're never going to match the product quality or speed or execution timelines of commercial companies. So,
no, I mean, it makes sense. Let's talk a little bit about forecasts.
Yeah.
Okay, you call it Tinder for government contracts?
Yes.
Yeah. What's Tinder? Just kidding.
So when we started this company and we interviewed all these people, one of the biggest problems they would complain about is that in the US specifically, I mean, actually abroad as well, especially in like the UK and Germany, most government contracts are won before they're released publicly, right? And so as an outsider, like you'd be like, oh, the government puts out contracts for bid and all of these companies can bid on them and compete and it's a fair market. Oh. It's not rigged, right? So we realized this problem that, okay, you can assume that any government contract over whatever the threshold is, in the US, I would state like over $75 million, is most likely shaped or put out with intuition for a company in mind, right? There are a lot of reasons that happens. We could talk about that later if you'd like. And so we realized that it's very difficult for companies to be proactive, right? Given that everything is relationship-based in its shape. So that was what we learned. So we then came into the game from the perspective of, okay, we need to build a platform that augments people's relationships, right? Relationships help them get ahead of the curve. How do we take that into context of what they actually want to go after? So we built this product called Forecasts, where we, as in Usul, use thousands of AI agents to go through every dollar the U.S. government spends, which is a massive problem, by the way. Like the databases the U.S. uses to track its spending are terribly labeled. And sometimes you'll see like an $100 million transaction, and then the description for that transaction be like 3 letters, like FGH or something. You have no idea what they just spent $100 million on, which is a very large problem. So all the data is mislabeled. And so we had to go in and create a labeled data set of every dollar the U.S. government spends to have clarity on, hey, what's this transaction for? Is this for a UAS product? Is this for energy infrastructure? Is this for consulting services? Like, is this, like, what is this, right? Step one. Once we did all of that, we would then run thousands of AI agents to determine off of all of those transactions which of these are relevant to your company. So let's use an example for Firestorm. We could go through all the, it's a 1.1 trillion right now, that the US government has spent in the past year, and I automatically categorize every UAS transaction across those companies. We could then identify the ones from your competitors, let's say, like, I don't know, the primes, like Northrop, Raytheon, Lockheed, right? That are expiring in the next 2 to 3 years, that you have a high chance of winning based off the PEOs all of your BD people engage with, right? And then recommend them to you 2 to 5 years ahead of the curve before they drop. So you guys have first mover advantage on that opportunity before a prime knows it exists. That was the thesis. It was like, generally, to put this simply, I just believe government contracting should be easy. I don't think it should be difficult. And with AI now, we can actually make sense of all this data, even though it's mislabeled, and help you get ahead of that curve. So that was what
how important for you guys, like, is anybody else trying to label this data, or are you guys really like the only show in town right now?
So one of our selling points, like our competitive selling points, is we have the only labeled data set of this data. And I think the reason for that is because most government software that's been around for the last 20 years, and even all of the new entrants in this space, they're all based off the same assumption, and that the government labels their data correctly, which you and I both know they don't.
Of course.
And to give you an example, legacy like government contract search tools or government like budget analysis tools are all based, like the actual taxonomy of those products is based off the way the government codes their data. For instance, like the government has accounting codes, like NAICS codes or product service codes, or they're based off of keyword inputs off the title of that contract, right? So to give you an example of why that sucks, if you input drone in one of those systems, and maybe it's like UAS, right? Or like small drone or like small UAS, it won't come up even though it's relevant to you, right? And so with those assumptions in mind, like we were just like, that's not accurate. Like, why is this the way it works? So we built our own data set to pretty much categorize anything, no matter the NAICS code, the product service code, the accounting code, the PE line, et cetera. So yeah, it's a competitive advantage for us. It was a very hard thing to do. Yeah.
No, it's good. I mean, you're building your moat, right?
Yeah.
Okay, one last question about kind of the product for a second, and then I want to just talk about what it's like being a founder in this space.
Yeah.
Right? You guys announced a relationship or a partnership with Palantir.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what that looks like and why you think it's important. You're obviously a Palantir alumni, so talk to us about that.
Yeah, so our partnership with Palantir, we primarily worked with them for what we just described. Labeling all this data. I think most people kind of look at Palantir as like the most robust and trusted like enterprise AI platform for companies around the world and governments around the world. So that was, the primary reason we worked with them. And I think to put this in practice, so you can imagine the impact, you can kind of think as like the scale of work that employees in your company or other government contractors do in like a pyramid, right? So imagine at the bottom you have like pretty easy data-related tasks, like let's say looking up a contract at sam.gov, or like finding a PE line for a drone, or like finding a requirement or a compliance matrix like in some RFP for whatever UAS system you're building. This is like simple tasks that like require some manual entry but aren't that difficult. Then in the second quartile of the pyramid, you have slightly more complex tasks. Let's say like building a market analysis for where all the funding lines are for drones, right? For small, medium, and large, right? Or finding every expiring contract from Raytheon for UAS that you can either displace or partner on, right? Like slightly more complex, like let's say like 5x the entry. And at the top, you have like really complex things, like one-shotting a 50-page or 100-page BAA for like a large UAS system, right? And so in this pyramid of tasks from like simple to more complex, like our platform, via working with them and building with our customers, has already started to completely automate this bottom quartile of tasks, right? So we can automate all of this for companies. They don't have to do it anymore. And people can actually focus on spending more time talking to customers. Like I imagine your BD team and the people you have on the ground with customers, they're best leveraged using their relationships, their experience, their prior service knowledge on the road instead of hand jamming in systems. We've already automated that bottom quartile. The middle quartile we're already pretty good at. We don't fully automate it. We automate the workflows to fix said tasks. So it requires user input and user knowledge, because we can't assume the knowledge on behalf of the user. But once they input it, we can generate like a report for them on like, here are all your teaming partners for like whatever contract you're trying to go after from Raytheon, right? Or like, here are all the funding lines for your drone, et cetera. Or all the PEO contact you should talk to. At the top, we're not quite there yet on one-shotting like the one-page VAA, but as models get better, we can. And so I think, like, to answer your question, it's just made our product a lot better. We've been able to solve more complex tasks in a faster timeline. And all this has happened in less than a year.
So what does success look like for you guys, let's say in the next 12 months and then in the next maybe 24 months?
Yeah. In the next 12 months, I really want to go international.
Cool.
I know we've already announced that. We've already started doing
Mr.
that.
Worldwide. People over here.
Yeah, so we have like over 60 countries in the platform.
Yeah.
In regards to like we can help you win deals across 60 nations or find drone opportunities or whatever for whatever company. And I'm really interested on having boots on the ground in those countries to give a sense of our company right now. We're only 9 people.
Yeah.
Like we are very lean and mean, and it's crazy. And I'm very excited to see how our traction picks up internationally as well as in the U.S. And as we keep scaling our company, like that's what my immediate near term is an international presence. Then as I look, multi years in the future, I'm more focused on like multi-domains. Like I mentioned in the beginning, like our goal is to not just be a defense procurement platform, but also like energy and healthcare and construction and IT, like literally everything. And I think like as we build the company, the product's already there. Our product is factored in a way where it can work for any source of data. It can work for any industry. It's just a matter of the input and like the customer feedback. But with 9 people, you need to stay focused. If we go to healthcare right now, like we're going to get pulled apart, and our defense product will probably get worse because we'll be trying to balance both at the same time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm most excited about in the future for let's say the next year and for the next few years.
So now let's talk a little bit about the journey, right?
Yeah.
What's it been like starting a company and dropping out of college?
The easiest way to put it is everything is much harder than I assumed. And more often than not, if something feels like if you have a decision to make as a founder, and there's like an easy way that like if you're like, and I can be inherently lazy sometimes, where like I just want to do the easy way. And there's a very hard way that clearly is much more
Everybody
work.
does that though.
Yeah.
Don't beat yourself up.
It's like the hard way is always the correct answer. And I think the easiest way to frame this in practice, or people who are thinking about starting a company, or just interested or maybe haven't done it before, is that your personal growth must be faster than the rate of the company's trajectory. And what that means in practice is like we dropped out of college after our sophomore year. I was 20 years old. Yeah. Right. I've been at this for a year. Yeah. And I feel like I've grown like 5 years in that year.
Of course.
And I think, and if to actually give you an example here, like we're growing about 20%, just over 20% month over month. And so what that does in practice is every 3 months, like my job fundamentally changes. And so the almost default for my job as a founder and CEO is that I'm going to be terrible at my job every 3 months, and it's going to reset, right? And so, and this is for all of for my co-founders as well. Like all of us are going to be bad at our jobs every 3 months because the company's going to keep growing. And so our personal growth has to match that rate of learning. Otherwise, we are not best suited for that job. And we also filter for talent for this methodology. So for instance, like we got questioned a lot why a lot of our early employees didn't have a lot of government contracting experience. I think it's very common for founders in this space for like their first hire to hire consultants or lobbyists or advisors and whatnot. And like, yes, we have people to help us do that. But our first hires were all extremely high IQ, intellectually curious, high-performing people in their early to mid-20s, like around our age, who we had to convince to come work in this industry, which obviously took a lot of work. But then once they were ramped up, and they learn so fast, they kind of fit this methodology. And so for all of us, you can assume that every 3 months, every person in the company's job changes, and they are now default bad at their job. And if their personal growth isn't faster than our month-on-month commercial growth, then they're no longer best suited for their job. So that's how I think about it.
Are things you do to try and level yourself up? Like, do you have a coach?
I wish.
You should get one.
I wish. I hope that as we scale the company, we're 9 people now. By the end of the year, we should be anywhere from 50 to 80. And as that happens, and I'm not just chief doer anymore, and I'm actually have to learn how to manage people, which is my next growth mode because I haven't done that before.
Tough skill.
Started when you're 20. I think a coach would be really helpful. Yeah. We're in this weird point right now where all of us are in the same room in San Francisco. Can just like look over each other's shoulder for anything. Sales, product engineering, like customer success, everyone's right there. Totally. And so right now my job as CEO is like I'm most of the time it can be the fastest to solve a problem or the fastest to get something done, which now my job is to build the systems to allow that to happen automatically. Like the easiest way to frame it is for the past year, my complete focus has been finding product market fit. We have it now. And now my job is to find company market fit. I've never done that before. And I think a coach would be amazing to help me do that. So.
How do you lean on investors or mentors to help you kind of to help solve that next level of growth?
Yeah. There was this really interesting anecdote I heard from an investor who was an early board member at Stripe about the Collison brothers that I've now took on, and that the Collison brothers would never ask their investors or members like questions, like yes/no questions. Like for instance, like if I didn't feel if I had a question mark on this hire, right? I wouldn't ask them. They wouldn't ask them like, should I hire this person? Here's all the details.
Yeah.
They would ask them like, what is their decision making criteria process for said scenario given these inputs, right? Kind of going back to the mom test of like, this is a very open-ended question that doesn't come across as loaded. Like, how would someone respond based off them not knowing your bias? I've taken that on. So I think more often than not, like I'll lean on our board. Sorry, we don't have a board. I'll lean on our investors or like our professors with these decision-making criteria scenarios to kind of help me think through things. Because obviously everything we do is my first time doing it because I've never done this before. So
what's it been like raising money?
So we did Y Combinator. Y Combinator helped us a lot and kind of creates like an engineering system around fundraising. And that it kind of optimizes for speed, which is really helpful for us. Like we got to close our round in like a week-ish, which is really fun. It was very sleepless, but it was great. I got to get back to operating. I think one of my biggest challenges and what investors' biggest challenges in this space, like looking at government contracting, is that historically, investors view this market as zero sum, which I actually would push back on them that it's not anymore.
Of course not.
It's not.
I know. Yeah, I have the same problem with my investors. So
exactly.
Don't beat yourself up.
Yeah, and I think the easiest way to frame this to like a Silicon Valley investor who doesn't know much about government contracting, when they look up whatever like McKinsey report on government contracting, like, oh, it's zero sum, fixed dollars, fixed companies. Like the easiest way to frame it is this. Lockheed Martin makes trillions of dollars, over decades for producing F-35s. If you look at the companies that actually build the components on F-35s, the radar is built by a different company. The electronic warfare set is built by a different company. The hub on the wheels is built by a different company. Like the actual axis is built by a different company, right? And there are thousands of suppliers that actually manufacture these goods that Lockheed Martin just takes into a shop, assembles together, tests it, and then sells it on a markup, right? So the actual majority of the value chain is captured through these business-to-business relationships and not business-to-government relationships. And so I'm trying to, this is back to your question, I think our unique insight that you also share is that this is not a zero-sum game. The market is much larger than people think. It's also growing at an astronomical rate, not only in the US, but also abroad, which we can also talk about. And so that right now is the biggest friction point we have around dealing with investors, is trying to like rewire their brain and how they view this space.
Do you think they actually take enough time to understand it? Or do you think they're just kind of checking down to like, oh, well, this is what I think and this is how it's always been. So like,
I mean, I would say that's up to them. I think investors that have we're both in the business of venture scalable companies, right? And both of us as CEOs have like fiduciary duty to increase said shareholder value for those investors. And I think the investors that win in these spaces, both in not only government contracting, but defense at scale will have to change the way they think about these things. And I imagine the leading investors already have, but majority of like Silicon Valley's investors, for example, probably don't know these things.
How many times are you basically asked like, oh, well, Palantir will just do this?
I've only gotten the Palantir question once. I get the OpenAI or like Anthropic
OpenAI.
question a lot.
Sure.
I think the easiest way to frame this is, we build our product in a way, you can kind of imagine like the way models improve as like an ocean that like is like a rising tide. We build our product in a way of it being like a boat that like rises with the tide of said ocean, right? And I got this quote from the founder of this company called Legora, another YC company, like legal AI startup, and Max, their founder, frames the way they build Legora like this sort of thing is the easiest way to frame it to people who don't understand like how AI applications can differ from AI model providers. And the way we build our product or the way we run our company is that we have to execute at a much higher product velocity than model providers. Because you can imagine like over the next 3 to 5 years, majority of like enterprise AI value that's pulled out of these models would be consolidated into like 1 or 2 category specific vertical AI companies per space, right? And I imagine like in government contracting, there'll be 1 or 2. There's obviously the incumbents and there's like the Deltechs of the world, right? Which I think we will destroy them. But that is how realistically this will play out. And right now, one of the biggest moats we have, like we talked about earlier, is all of the data that these platforms are based off of that's open source is not labeled. It's also not connected with each other. And I think that argument can be applied to any industry. Like I imagine like the founders of Harvey and Legora, which are the 2 leading legal AI startups, or ask the same questions. And both those companies are worth multi-billions of dollars now.
$4 billion each.
Exactly, right? They ask the same questions. Like why can't OpenAI just do this? And I would imagine their answers are, one, the data isn't public, so it's not like a model's just going to grab it. And two, the product velocity is much faster. And three, it requires industry knowledge. Like that's probably the most important. Yeah. Selling to the government, I would argue, is the most archaic industry on earth and the most relationship driven. And you can't just pull in, you can't just magically send an LLM into everyone's brain in your company now of like 150 people and pull all of their context of everyone they know and then magically dump it into an LLM. You actually have verticalized AI with that knowledge built in-house, which is what we're doing.
So then what's an inflection point you can hit inside your company that you think would be like the next major unlock for, I call it maybe the aha moment for investors to understand like how you have something that is one, defensible, and two, is going to scale rapidly?
Yeah, I would say there's two steps in our business. Mm-hmm. The great thing right now is we already have PMF on our product. Mm-hmm. Usage is amazing. Companies have won billions of dollars to our platform, and it's become like a core workflow of how people work, which is like awesome.
Yep.
So, on like the software side of the house of what we do, all we really need to sell is like there's X amount of companies we can sell this to. Here's our ACV. We can make tens of billions of dollars a year. Like that's a very clear sell to an investor. Mm-hmm. The more complex and I think the cooler problem to solve of this is the inverse, so the government side of this problem, right? Because there are two core problems that need to be solved in government procurement. It's step one, matching companies to said government work, right? Which is what we're doing right now. Our platform does that. That's what we get paid for today. And step two is matching government buyers to the best capability. Best capabilities at those companies, at the people in those companies, right? So imagine like MOD in whatever nation you want to name. Let's just call it like Poland or Ukraine or Japan or South Korea. Once modular UAS platforms that can be manufactured on site, they know to call you and they know to match you, which is a problem that they're facing right now. A lot of them don't know you exist, right?
Of course.
Or once they know you exist, they don't know the fastest way to buy your tech, right? Because they all have local distributors with local contract vehicles, like in their own procurement mazes, right? That's a much harder problem to solve. Yeah. Which is why, to our anecdote earlier, if something's very hard, you should probably run at it. Like I want to run at that problem too. Yeah.
You guys should get bought by Salesforce.
I'd be very depressed. I think our company, I think our employees would be very depressed.
Yeah. No, Jarren, thanks for coming today. One last question for you, man. I always like to hear how people's brains work, right? Or what they're consuming right now.
Yeah.
What are you reading? What are you listening to? What are you watching that's interesting? Can be anything. It doesn't need to be work related.
It's funny. I grew up playing this game a lot called GeoGuessr.
Okay.
It's a computer game in which it plops you in a random location in the world on Google Maps.
Oh, yeah. You match the images based on sun.
Yeah. You try to guess where you are.
Okay.
I was very cracked at this game.
Okay.
To the point where like I could just like within like 5 seconds could one shot like a Kyrgyzstan or like a Bulgaria or something.
Sick.
Like I was very good in high school. Probably because I would like finish my work and then get super bored, and then on the computer I would like start doing that.
That'll be a whole nother conversation about how do we take really smart kids in America and keep them engaged in high school.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's impossible. I mean, I'm clearly a bad example because I left high school, I left college. I'm clearly not the best example of that.
I'm like a generation before you where I would just they'd make you be there and I'd just be reading and I'd get yelled at all the time.
Exactly.
But, yeah, go on.
So the best part about this game was that,
GeoGuessr.
it's on the computer. So if we were writing an essay in class, like your teacher would think I was writing the essay, and that like in the worst case, they call you on the computer. They think you're on like Google Maps or something. It wasn't like you're playing like a shooting game or like some like Subway Surfers or something. Yeah. Anyways, I got back into playing that game. I think one of the best things that game has taught me is the importance of visual like design intuition, right? I like to consider myself a designer or like chief design officer of our company.
Okay.
And I think the only reason for that is like I grew up playing so much GeoGuessr where your speed of determining like where you are in the world is based off how fast you can like visually percept like context clues of like, oh, I'm in this room, I'm in this location, that language, that website domain, like that bush, or like sun's in the north, like we're in the southern hemisphere type thing, like in like seconds to minutes, has now rubbed off on our company, and that like everything we do has extreme visual detail and visual intent. And that's important because when you build AI for people who haven't used AI, you can't tell them like, here's AI, go figure out how to use it, it'll make your life easier. You actually have to like design something that's intuitive, that not only looks good but works like luxuriously, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that game in particular, I grew up playing it. I'm playing it again. It just keeps my design brain active, which is important for our company.
So now every time I'm in someplace new, I'm going to send you a picture and I'll make you guess.
Yeah.
I'm going to put a stop
put a wager.
on it. Yeah, exactly.
What are the poly market odds of Jarren?
Yeah, exactly. We'll build a whole betting market and then we'll rig it. No, dude, thanks for coming by. It's good to see you.
Thanks for having me. Nice office.
Great. Thanks for listening to the Drone Wars podcast. If you liked what you heard today, please subscribe to catch all the latest insights for all things defense and geopolitics.